What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to my slightly late review for Wednesday Season 2. It just wrapped up on Netflix about a week and a half ago. I did watch part 1 of Season 2 when it hit Netflix at the beginning part of August. And then the second part came around and I just got caught up with a couple of things, my personal work schedule as well, and the fact that this is a show that I like to watch with my wife. Our schedules hadn't aligned, but finally, last night, got to sit down with her and catch up on the final 4 episodes of the season. And before I get into this, I can't possibly be the only one who is kind of like over these like different parts being released in the seasons that Netflix is doing. I'm kind of over it, full transparency. I don't know why they do it. I don't think it's fun. I'd much rather a weekly release of episodes or just a full batch than having to wait months at a time for a batch of episodes. Because I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I just feel like I'm kind of pulled away from the story and then I'm brought back in and I don't feel as invested as I was when I was initially watching it. That doesn't mean that I don't get reinvested into it, but I just always find that there's just a bit of a kind of weird feeling about leaving a season for a chunk of time and then coming back to the same season. I don't know, especially with how long they made audiences wait for Wednesday Season 2. But with all that said, let's talk about the season. I will make it clear though, because of the fact that I'm a little late to this and the fact that the season has come out in parts and a lot of people have already seen it, I am going to talk a little bit more openly with spoilers. So if you have not seen Wednesday Season 2, this is probably not the video for you, but I'll say quickly for those viewers that I enjoyed the season. I do think that the first season is a little bit of a tighter season for the most part, but I think Season 2 is a great follow-up in a lot of ways that has a lot of that fun, Addams Family fun. Definitely takes what the first season did, doubles down on it, definitely goes for bigger, sometimes not better, but sometimes better, and definitely has a lot more plot points going on throughout the course of this season. This season is once again showrun by Alfred Goff and Miles Miller, and of course executive produced by Tim Burton, who also deals with things like writing and is one of the directors of multiple episodes, and of course has a returning cast of people like Jenna Ortega, Emma Myers, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Luis Guzman, Isaac Ordonez, Joy Sunday, and so many others. And I do want to mention that there are a couple of actors that did not return for this season, most notably the character of Xavier, played by Percy Hines White. They announced that he would not be returning. He was a love interest of sorts for Wednesday in that first season and was somebody who was suspected being part of the murder mystery that we're following in that show. But I don't know the exact details of it, but I did read somewhere online that he was accused of some pretty messed up things. I don't necessarily know if those things came out to be valid or if they turned out to just be rumors, or if, I don't know. I don't know if anything came of those things, but I know that that's part of why he didn't return from what I was reading online, but I don't know the full validity of that. But unfortunately, the character of Xavier does not return in this season, which was pretty, I would say, jarring to a degree. I think that they kind of just like write him off in a way. And it does feel like one of those situations of like outside of the production stuff, kind of ruining what could have been an interesting story point here. But again, I don't know the details there. And I think for the most part, they make the most of it and move forward with the characters that we do have in this season. And then the most other notable kind of change in the cast is the character of Lurch. In the first season, he was played by George Burcia, and this time around, he's played by Jonas Suotamo, who many fans will know as the guy who plays Chewbacca in the modern-day Star Wars stuff, as well as the Jedi Wookiee Kelnaka in Star Wars The Acolyte. From what I read online, the main reason for this recasting was simply because of height difference, because Suotamo is about 6'11", whereas the actor who played him in the first season was about 6'3". I think it's a bit of a silly thing to do just based on height alone, though I am a fan of Jonas Suotamo, so it's nice to see him in the role, but I do feel bad for the actor who played him in season 1, simply being recast because he wasn't tall enough. But as for new faces that you have in the season, you also have Steve Buscemi this time around as Nevermore's new principal, Barry Dort. Lady Gaga was one of the biggest things they were marketing this show around, which was Rosaline Rotwood. She is essentially a cameo. I think they teased her to be a much bigger player in this season, and outside of a song that they released for the season that has a dance number tied to it, and the fact that she's just in the show, her involvement is pretty limited. And with all the marketing and all the setup for the fact that Lady Gaga was going to be in this season, I did expect a little bit more from that. Outside of her, you also have people like Billie Piper in the show, and even somebody like Christopher Lloyd, who appears here, who of course played Fester in the old Addams Family movies, and returns here as a new character, a professor that's just a floating head. So I thought that was really cool. It's nice to see Christopher Lloyd here. I hope they do more of that. They did that with Christina Ricci, of course, in the last season, who also reappears in this season, who of course originally played Wednesday. So I thought that was all really cool, fun little Easter eggs. And immediately, if you were a fan of this show and you're a fan of Tim Burton, then you're gonna see a lot of the stuff that you enjoyed in that first season here. That weird Tim Burton vibe, that great musical score. You have a really cool look and feel to everything. It's weird, it's zany, it leans into the silliness of the Addams Family world while also, again, bringing that Tim Burton vibe to it. Jenna Ortega is great once again in the role of Wednesday, and the rest of the returning cast is great. And this time around, the Addams Family themselves have a more central role. Pugsley is actually going to Nevermore this time around, and of course you have the rest of the family who are more involved, most notably Morticia and Gomez. It was really nice to see them be more integral players in this season, where in the first season it was really more about Wednesday and the rest of the cast was just there for little moments here and there over the course of the season. But this time around they are main players in the season, with the story being played out through all of them. And so I was actually kind of pleased to see Pugsley get a little bit more screen time here, though I have seen a lot of criticisms online because the actor who plays him, Isaac Ordonez, actually had a huge growth spurt between the first season and the second season, which does tend to happen when you have young kid actors, especially in that little, range of like 10 to 15, where a lot can happen, right? Growth spurts, you're going to start maturing, there's going to start going through puberty, and that definitely happened here with Isaac, because he went from being this young little kid who was kind of silly in the first season, who didn't have a bunch to do, but definitely had that Pugsley vibe to him, to a much bigger guy who's got a deeper voice, and he has to now play Pugsley while not necessarily looking like what Pugsley should look like. And I think for the most part, he does a good job here. I think this is a situation of an actor maybe not looking the part anymore, but he did a good job of playing the part. I think for the most part, he captures that innocent, whimsical tone, kind of silly, dim-witted tone that you need from Pugsley. And so it's nice to see him get a little bit more screen time here. We're going to get into him in just a second, because there is a big part that has to do with him in this season. But it was nice in general to see the Addams Family have more to do here. And in general, getting back to Nevermore, it was nice to see Wednesday reuniting with Enid, and what we learn about Enid over the course of the season, their friendship, some of the struggles there. There's the new character of Agnes that's introduced here, who I thought at first was an annoying character that was going to be more of a comedic bit, but eventually became a really likable character over the course of the season. Essentially a third part now, adding to the duo of Jenna Ortega and Emma Myers. Now you have this new character, Agnes, that's in the mix, adding to a trio of characters, and I really enjoyed that element of the show. I thought she was a very likable character, especially as she came more into her own later on in the show. But I did kind of find it funny to see her be so obsessed with Wednesday and the duality of those two characters, and I think Jenna Ortega played off of her very, very well. Now, what I can say is I think season 1 of Wednesday had a more strong, streamlined narrative. It's a little bit more contained. There is a murder mystery. There's only so many players in the mix, and things kind of are restrained to a few environments. In the case of this season, there are quite a few things going on, different characters with different plot points that all do coalesce by the time you get to the end of the season, but there are a lot of different things going on with different characters. You have Steve Buscemi in here, who's the new principal, who is very obviously going to turn out to be a bad guy when you're watching the season, and it turns out that's exactly what's happening. It turns out that he is the leader of, I believe, the group called Morning Star, which is the group that Bianca, who is a siren, and her mother is part of. So, we had heard about that in the first season. This time around, we get to see a little bit more of that, and we see that Steve Buscemi, who has these fire abilities, has been the one behind everything and has been using the sirens, including Bianca, over the course of this season, to use their siren song to try to manipulate people. And so he's kind of running not only Nevermore, but running just the strings behind everything. And I think for the most part, Steve Buscemi was a fun villain in the show, but I think it was pretty obvious he was going to turn out to be a villain. And once he does, it's pretty generic bad guy stuff. And I do think that the way that they wrap up his narrative and how he's taken out at the end was a little bit lackluster, if I'm honest. It felt a little bit like just like they needed to wrap that up a little bit faster than I maybe expected them to. But he gets his comeuppance. It was entertaining to watch, but it was something that I was expecting a little bit more from, and I do think it was a little predictable to see where they were going to go with that. Then I mentioned that Pugsley plays a bigger role this time around, and that's most notably because he hears a story early in the season about a student that used to go to Nevermore who died, who had a clock heart, a heart that was running on a clock, and that he was, at the base of a tree out in the woods. And so Pugsley, with his electric powers, goes out to that tree in the woods, ends up shocking the ground, and resurrects a zombie that he names Slurp. Now, over the course of the season, Slurp starts to eat people's brains, and as he does, he becomes more and more human-like, eventually revealing that he is actually a character known as Isaac Knight, who actually has a history with Morticia and Gomez. And we learn through some flashbacks that they are responsible essentially for the fact that this guy died. We also learn that Isaac Knight is actually the sister of Francois, I believe is her name, the mother of Tyler, who of course was the big villain at the end of the first season, the Hyde, who we see over the course of this season is locked up. Eventually he is released. He's reunited with his mother, who he believed was dead in the first season, only to find out that she was locked up in the same place that he was locked up the entire time, and that she too is a Hyde. And so we learn that Isaac Knight is this zombie this entire time, and the reason he died is because he was trying to use a machine to get rid of his sister's Hyde abilities, but he was going to kill Gomez in the process. And so Morticia saves Gomez. It ends up killing Isaac Knight. And now there's this big revenge tale as this brother zombie is reunited with his sister, who's the mother of Tyler. And now there's this whole plot for that family reunion to kill the Addams family, most notably Pugsley, since he has the same ability that Gomez had in the past. And as you can tell, just me kind of rambling this off, it is a lot just with that subplot alone, let alone things like Morningstar in the season, and the fact that you also have the character of Enid, who of course we know is a werewolf, learning halfway through the season or so that she is a alpha, that she is possibly going to be this one specific type of werewolf where they can turn into a werewolf when there's not a full moon, meaning that they will be a lone wolf on their own. And if she turns into a werewolf during a full moon, that she can possibly stay as a werewolf for the entirety of her life. And so that's where we kind of wrap up the season when it comes down to Enid, when she essentially sacrifices her ability to not turn back into human form in order to go and save Wednesday amidst this big final battle with Isaac Knight, Tyler, and his mother. This ultimately leads to a big final showdown between the Addams family and the family reunion of the Hydes, Tyler, his mother, and Isaac Knight, and all of that. This leads to a big showdown as well between Tyler and his mother, which eventually, unfortunately, leads to the death of Tyler's mother. Even though he was trying to kill his mom as a Hyde, when he sees that she's dead, he's sad as a Hyde. I thought that was a little bit contradictory, but I can understand what they were going for the most part. So the season does end with the fact that Tyler is still out there alive as a Hyde somewhere. Isaac Knight has been taken out. Oh, and I should also mention that we do learn that Thing is actually initially attached to Isaac Knight. We learned that he's actually originally the hand of Isaac Knight. So there is this element of Isaac Knight putting Thing back onto his body, and then Thing kind of fighting his way off of the body, having a mind of his own, which I thought was a fun sequence for sure. In a lot of ways, this season had so many of these elements that make the Addams family what it is. It's weird, it's zany, it goes for crazy a lot of times. Add that in with a filmmaker like Tim Burton, who has his own ridiculous style, and you're gonna have a really fun, whimsical, weird show that leans into the absurd and oftentimes grotesque, but never in a way that's overly grotesque. It's tasteful, grotesque, and for the most part, I think this season worked. It was a good, fun time that leaned into the charm and the fun of the first season, but definitely has a lot more going into it. It has a lot more in terms of the just overall stakes, a lot more characters, and I think sometimes it does create for a messier story. It does create for a lot going on, and I don't necessarily know that all of the subplots and every storyline was the most exciting or brought together at the end in the most satisfying way, but for the most part it was an entertaining piece of television, despite the fact that I could think that there was a couple of things that were a little messy. Now, I mentioned earlier that you have Lady Gaga in this show, and she plays the character of Rosaline Rotwood, and again, they marketed this as like a huge part of the season, that she was going to be like a big, mentor figure in the season. They had did this performance at the To Doom event where she pops up and did this huge musical number and with Jenna Ortega on stage. And ultimately, she's just like a quick, brief cameo in one sequence where Jenna Ortega's Wednesday is trying to reattach herself to her powers. And yeah, there really isn't much to Lady Gaga in this season. Quite frankly, they could have cut her from the season altogether, but it's a fine part there. I kind of wish that they had done more with that. They do find a way to bring Gwendolyn Christie back, though, who did die in the first season, and she is the new spirit guide of Wednesday in this season. She was a fun part of the show, though. I did really enjoy the fact that they were able to bring her back. It does feel like they were doing some mental gymnastics in the writing to bring her back, because the spirit guide to Wednesday Addams has to be a family member or somebody who's a relative, and so they do explain how they were related in a couple of different ways there. But for the most part, I thought that was a really fun part, and I thought there were some really great moments of dialogue, banter, and some great heartfelt moments between Gwendolyn Christie and Jenna Ortega over the course of the season. And like I already mentioned, the show ends. You got Tyler still out there as a Hyde. Enid is somewhere out there as a full werewolf, just lost on her own, and you got Wednesday going out there with Uncle Fester now to go and try to find where Enid is, as she promised that she would. And then the big reveal at the end of the season is that Aunt Ophelia, who we had heard is dead over the course of the show, is actually alive and is being kept secret underground by Grandmama Hester in her cellar. And so that's the big tease for the end. We see Aunt Ophelia writing on the wall, "Wednesday must die." And yeah, hopefully we don't wait too long to get season 3 of Wednesday. Overall, though, I enjoyed my time watching the show, despite the fact that I felt it was a little overstuffed at times. I do think it's a very well acted show. It leans into all of the charm that made the first season what it is, and more than anything, has great filmmaking. Everything from the costume design, the set design, the locations used, the cinematography, the musical score over the course of the show leans into exactly what made the first season of Wednesday great outside of the storytelling. And I think for the most part, if you like the first season of Wednesday, despite some grievances you may have, I think you're going to enjoy this. If you're a fan of Tim Burton, I think you're going to enjoy this. If you're a fan of the Addams family and their weirdness, that style is here. I think you'll certainly enjoy it. And more than anything, it's just a good, fun time watching it. It knows what it is. It leans into the silliness. It leans into the ridiculousness of it, and ultimately I never found myself bored watching any episode of this season, and I'm really looking forward to season 3. I hope they nail it. I hope they bring it together maybe a little bit tighter than this season did, but ultimately I can genuinely say that my experience with both seasons of Wednesday has been very positive, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with this franchise moving forward. It's nice to see the Addams family having a lot of life in the modern day, when it felt like they were gone for a little bit. There were those animated movies, but it just felt like the Addams family wasn't as much in the cultural zeitgeist as it is currently. And it's nice to kind of see it being revitalized in the way that it has been. I will say, though, in terms of production value, though I have been praising it, that the CGI is a little bit better in this season than it was in the first season, but I do think it's a little goofy at times still. But for the most part, I do think the CGI matches the tone of the show, which is something I've always said. As long as the CGI matches the tone of what I'm watching, I'm okay. And I think for the most part, the CGI here does match the tone. And so with all that said, this is my rambly, spoiler-filled, all over the place review of Wednesday Season 2. Definitely looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say, so leave some comments down below. Did you enjoy the season? Did you not enjoy the season? Whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.